would like to thank you too for letting us come to your house and interview you.
It's a pleasure.
I've known Philip a little more than you maybe, but always interested in some of the stuff you're working on. I think they're neat, very important things too. So, but then I hear more about you too as time goes along. So, I understand you work with other people on these things too, so it's not only your work.
For sure.
You know.
It's always a team.
And that's really important to emphasize that we're going to cover a lot of topics, right?
Yeah.
But it's this community and other people in this community that work with you, alongside you.
Yes.
You know, and so I never wanted to sound like we did this.
Sure.
It's an exceptional community to do things in.
Oh, good to hear. Yeah. Okay, so I might start with a bit about your background, like when you were younger. Where did your families live when you started out life?
Well, I was born in Edmonton. We moved east though when I was really young. So
Sure.
Yeah, my dad got a job in Toronto, and we lived in Clarkson, then in Oakville.
Okay.
Before I met Phillip in Oakville.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, then we moved here when we got married. Yeah, I did my university work all at Glendon, in Quebec City too, at Laval.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you teach when you were teaching in Maslow?
Well, that's elementary school. I was actually the supply teacher because I'm trilingual, so...
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, I taught elementary school 1 to 8, but then
Okay.
after my kids all went to high school and they didn't want me to follow them there, I did my teaching English second language certificate.
Okay.
So for the last 15 years I've been doing that, teaching adults
Okay.
English. Before that it was in French
Oh,
at Maslow. So.
yes. I know Maslow a bit. Used to have co-op students going there
Uh-huh.
way back. Yeah, and they really enjoy it. Philip, what about you? Where are you from originally?
Yeah, born and raised in Oakville, and 1950s, Ford plants moving to Oakville, town was expanding, right? My father was a contractor, and then then off to university. Met Marilyn in Oakville, then off to university,
Good.
and then couldn't afford my father's home in Oakville.
Oh, yeah.
Like all of us, you move to where you can buy a house, and Newmarket was.
Wasn't too bad.
It was affordable. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, over the years, I've heard good things about what you're working on. I particularly like what you're doing with the prison system, helping out the gentlemen coming away from, in jail. I didn't know about, something came out in the paper about what you were working on.
Mm-hmm.
The helping
Yes.
hands.
Helping, yes, just the fact that I had no idea that was going on. They came out of jail without any other stuff that they had passed over when they went to prison.
Yeah, they come out with. I mean, this is ongoing as we speak. There will be probably someone released this afternoon on the corner of Yonge and Eagle with no identification, no money,
Crazy.
and no health card. So even if you're told you need to go to the
CAMH.
CAMH, mental assistance,
Yeah.
you can't get in because you don't have your health card.
Oh boy.
You can't get. How are you going to get there?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's horrendous, and we do 250 people a year. So that's one a day for every day the court's open.
Well, it came to us directly. I was at McDonald's. We used to have a coffee group going there. And I'd see these gentlemen coming in, usually guys, and they're asking for handouts or whatever just to get by.
Yeah.
So, but you maybe come together. I wasn't sure where they're coming from or...
Yeah, so if you're released, if you're a woman, you're released generally from Milton, and a man generally from Lindsay.
Yeah.
You cannot get back to the jail to get your possessions unless you leave before the court opens. And if you do make it there, you will make it there after the jail is closed.
Wow.
Now, what's going to happen? Somebody in desperation is going to do something desperate.
Right on.
And then we're all going to say, how did that happen?
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you got it in the paper, because that opens some eyes. Well, let's get on to what you do together.
Right.
Okay? Where do you want to start?
Where do you want to start? Well, did Richard say what do you remember about the 80s? Because I think that's probably where we started in Newmarket.
Okay.
Actually, we lived on Prospect Street.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think the very first thing we did in Newmarket when we didn't have all our boys yet, the little kid on the corner of Prospect and Queen,
Mm-hmm.
he loved Lorne Painter, who lived across the street. I don't know if you knew Lorne Painter.
I knew the daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
He always wanted to go see Lorne and Grace. Gladys. Gladys?
Grace.
Grace.
Oh, okay.
There was no stoplight there, so
Oh, okay.
that's, I think, the first time we ever called council. Well, you did. And said, what do we do about this?
Good.
And yeah, and that really was an eye opener into the community. It was Claire Salisbury. I remember somebody.
Oh.
I don't know. I called the town office. Somebody said, "Oh, you got to call Claire." I called Claire, and he came over and he said, "Yeah, I know this is a problem, and you're right, and we do have to do something about it." And the next thing I know, there's a light, and I said, I like this community, right? There was no.
Good response.
Yeah,
I've heard that before about Clara.
yeah.
Little things like that. They make a difference. Good.
Yeah, I mean, it was the late 80s, I guess we moved over to Church Street.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time when, I forget how the timing worked, but we ended up needing a neighborhood association for the old part of town. Because,
There was a lot of
Basement.
absentee landlords.
Yeah.
There was
Oh.
a lot of demolition. There was no. The town was growing, and
Yes.
demands were changing, and there were no guidelines. And
Wow.
yeah, but I think basement apartments were kind of legislated. We need to, what's the word? We need to have more people in a small area. What's that word?
We have to encourage it.
No.
intensification.
Intensify. We need to intensify. That was the first that we knew of.
Yeah.
We need to intensify. And the mayor at the time, Mayor Twinney, said we're going to put them all in the old part of town, these basement apartments. And we looked at our basement in a century
Yeah.
home and thought, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And that's when it was that basement apartment issue that got us to help form the Newmarket Heritage Neighborhood Association. Philip was the president. I think Jackie was the treasurer. I can't remember.
But we weren't against basement apartments. We weren't
No.
against intensification. What we were against is dangerous conditions. People being
Yes.
put in without proper fire exits,
Yeah.
smoke, that type of thing.
Daylight.
Yeah, it needed attention. So
But from there, I mean, we got the neighborhood really well organized, so there was a representative on every street that could do a petition.
Oh.
Like in a day, we could have a petition together to send to council.
Okay.
So when they decided they were going to shut the Peter Gorman pool and pave it over, make a parking lot.
I forgot about that until
Yeah.
And we asked them, why are you going to close the pool? And they said, because no one uses it. I said, but no one uses it because it's such a mess.
It's green.
It's horrible. Oh. And I'm not saying the town was stupid.
No.
They weren't. In fact, this is the wonderful part of being in Newmarket. These were your friends and neighbors that would talk to you and go, you're right, the pool is a mess. We should,
Yeah.
what about, and Gorman Pool was a classic. They came back to us and said, how about this? We make a pool that's outdoors, sunlight, shallow.
Yeah.
We'll put in tennis courts that it becomes a skating rink. We'll redo the floodplains, put in a basketball court. Right, so once they,
Oh, it just took off.
they,
Spread around.
and the town has always been good at that, right? That
Good.
what what do people want? Wow. What about this? What about that?
As long as they heard, and we'd do a petition, so the
Okay.
whole neighborhood
Okay.
would sign, or everybody who agreed anyways.
Sure.
And we'd present that to council and say,
Great.
here's what we want.
Good.
So when the St. Paul's Anglican Church was going to be demolished, same thing.
Wow.
We said, hold on.
Wow, thank goodness you amongst many.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was many.
That was
right?
huge. That was a big concern. We have a lot of background in that church in our family.
Yeah, they were going to take out the stained glass windows ultimately. That's the day they finally changed their mind.
Wow.
No.
Tanner Rhodes put a basement in that place, under the church. I didn't know that.
I don't know.
He dug it out himself pretty well, a wheelbarrow. So he was quite a guy. Always liked that.
Yeah, so we did stuff like that. I think there were a couple of intensification projects that were going to put high rises. It's always the same old thing.
Yeah.
Close to the heritage part of town, and we got those stopped or changed, and eventually we ended up helping write the design. Well, we did the design guidelines actually. That was that was in the early 90s.
Okay.
I think it was called Heritage Canada. Again, it was a group of people that got together, and the document was about 500 pages long, design guidelines for the old part of town.
Oh wow.
That was shelved, that one.
Oh.
But from that, the designation of the old part of town
Yeah.
as historic in the official plan. This was the work of the town. They were able to. They knew how to capture and preserve it, and they did. Again, they had the skills. They used them for what the people wanted.
Sure. Yeah. Tanner Rhodes had a place he stayed. The house on Foster Street?
Yeah, on Timothy?
Or was it
Was
Timothy?
it Tim?
Yeah, Chimsing.
Yeah.
That was from wood from the fairgrounds. Those old
Really?
buildings. All that wood went to that house. Yeah, we had an interview with him, but again, it got lost.
Hopefully this one will too.
Hey, whatever. So what else have you done together? You've got a number of things here, like the Infant Nicole. That's super. I have a couple of friends of mine that work there now on it. That helps a lot of people.
Yeah, so that's a Young Street meeting Quaker project
Oh,
that we run out. So it's just three
The
times a
infant
year.
cold isn't.
Oh, the infant Nicole, no, but the dinner. What we
Oh.
work on is dinner.
oh,
Three
I
times
see.
a year we prepare dinner there.
Oh, okay.
But in establishing the infant Nicole, no, I tried to,
Oh,
didn't get there.
oh, fine, okay.
I was
Clarification.
part of the beginning of it, but other things took over.
Okay.
Every once in a while, Tom Taylor would give me a call and say, "You'd be a good one to have on this project, Marilyn." I already had 50 million things going on, but I tried to do it, but
Okay.
luckily other people took over.
Okay.
But just a footnote on infant Nicole. So there are a lot of homeless in Newmarket.
Yes.
But one of the other interesting things is I've, been going around town with counselors on various things, right? And we would see a homeless person. They generally know their name, and they generally know where they live, even if they live under a bridge or they live in the marsh or whatever.
Yes.
So again, it's a great community because they care for even those that are not participants in it. They
Yes.
care very much. I had an incident with the police where I literally pulled a man out of a snowbank. He was drunk at 3 p.m. He fell in.
Wow.
I plucked him out, and a cruiser went by. I waved them down, and they said, "Oh, it's Ben." I said, "Ben just lives 2 doors down, and Mary's home at 4:30. So just walk him over there, and he'll be fine."
Looked after.
What a great community!
Wow.
Yeah, and I always remember when, the nursery school, that's not something we did together, except our kids were there.
Okay.
But when we had to move the Newmarket Co-op nursery school out of the Church of the Nazarene. I happened to be president of the school at the time.
Oh.
And the executive and I went to see Mayor Twinney to see if he could help.
Yeah.
And Tom was regional counselor at the time. He came in, and they were just working on what were they going to do with the office specialty. It had, I don't know whether they just bought it. Anyway, they put us in the office specialty, and
Oh,
we could design it the way we wanted it
sure.
in the basement of the office specialty. And but I was saying thank you a million times, and Tom said, in this community, we like to help people when they're helping themselves, and you guys do a lot of work. So
Hey,
And just a footnote, you say in the basement, but it was all glass, one
yeah,
wall.
the ground floor.
So it was
Oh.
fresh air and sunshine, and
It was a beautiful
It was a
space.
beautiful space. And again, Tom and Ray, you know what? For the nursery school, look, fresh air, sunlight. That's
Yeah.
the section. How do you want to build it? And brought in, I think they were called the SWAT team,
Oh.
the town guys that could do
Oh, yeah,
anything.
right.
John, what was John's last name?
Oh.
Anyway, but they were, they were great. You want a wall there? Take one up.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know.
Super. Oh, that's neat. And you worked on Syrian refugee family. The latest, well, we have one family. It was about 5 kids, I think.
Yeah, the four kids.
4 kids. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they've been here a year and a half now.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't help too much with the organizing, but I did help with the English second
Oh, right.
language to start with. And still we taxi.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
We have a taxi schedule set up for them, so.
okay. Well,
Well, that's probably a good opportunity to talk about our Afghans on ASA, right? Because
yes.
it's an amazing story, which we won't go into here, but suddenly a 15-year-old boy coming out of a war appears in our life. And it was 2 solid years of working with the Canadian community. And when I say that, we'd go to the health clinic and they would say, okay, he needs this, this, and this shot. He's 15. We can get them all for free. And let's get this. Let's get dental done. Right? And the welcoming of the Canadian community was stunning in terms of what more can we do? How else can we help? The school, for example, the boy had come out of a war. They thought
He was at Newmarket High.
at Newmarket,
Was it?
if the fire alarms go off and he doesn't know, he's going to think he's under attack. So we are going to tell him in advance. He can't tell anyone, but we don't want him upset.
So the vice principal would come and say, Esson, or she'd send a note home. There's going to be a fire alarm tomorrow, so be prepared at 11 o'clock. And
Ah.
So
So he would come over here not knowing English, probably.
no, his English was
Or
and
was
is
what?
very good.
Oh, it was good. That helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
He's-
totally different culture.
Well, we gave him a room on Botsford Street, a very quiet street that has a balcony in the back. And after a few weeks, I said, "You never go outside." No,
On
he
the
said,
balcony.
Really?
snipers.
Oh. Good point. That's his background.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's 100 ASON stories. I think the best
Wow.
one, we went Joker's Hill, went for a walk. It was
Yes.
a beautiful autumn day. Those beautiful days. And we'd had some time with him by then. He put one foot outside the van and he froze. He said, "ASON, what's wrong?" He said, "Landmines." He said, "What do you see that I do not see?" He said, "Right there on the post." And they were trail markers.
Oh, I see.
Red, fully mined. Blue, partially mined. Green, clear. We're staying on the green path, right?
Wow.
Yeah, wow. To be able to say to them, "No, you can walk about 1,000 miles in any direction.
Yes.
Nothing's going to happen." So we all learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. He's great. We learned a lot about the Canadian refugee system as well,
Cool.
and just how welcoming and thorough
helpful.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, maybe we'll move on to Phil for a minute. If that's all right.
I'll try and be quiet.
Oh, well, I'm sure you can put a few
You can
things in
assist.
too. So, Philip. The John Howard Society, Elizabeth Fry Society, both sects took out here. And these are for people coming out of prison, especially.
These agencies are originally designed for people coming out of prison, or in Elizabeth Fry's case, people going into prison,
Yes.
but helping people in trouble with the law. But generally, they've been incarcerated or they're about to be incarcerated, right? So,
Sure.
and we know from experience, if someone is released from prison, if in 72 hours they don't have support systems in place, where are they going to sleep? Where are they going to eat? What are they going to do? They will go back to their old ways because they have to. They will survive. And like all of us, you do what you do best.
Sure.
So the thrust is to here are options. So even before they're released from the prison, Jack, what are you going to do? Like, where are you going to stay? Well, I know there was problems with the family. Is your sister going to have you? Your parents going to be upset? Can we get you a job? And what kind of skills do you have? Let's set up a doctor. Let's set up a psychiatrist. Here's how the welfare system works. Here's how much money you could expect, right? Here's how to apply for unemployment, so that you come out into the world with some chance. I mean, I know guys that have spent so much time in prison, when they come out, the idea of opening their own door is a shock. They've forgotten that they can open their own door.
Wow.
To mail a letter.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
But then, so what happened in the context of the town with the John Howard Society, it was Pat Noble, wasn't it, who called you,
Oh,
The mayor's secretary,
Secretary.
administrator?
who, because it's a small community, phoned me and said, Philip, I know, you're interested in this, you have background in this. We have a need, they're looking to get position. Can you help us? Can we work together? Again, it's a small community, knowing each other, helping each other. She didn't have to make that call. But she did.
But she did.
She did.
Great lady.
Yeah.
Nice to hear. And you're working on this, last time we talked about the Mexican situation.
Right, so I'm with, they're called Christian Peacemaker teams.
Yeah.
They're Mennonite based.
Oh.
And they go into conflict areas where they're invited. So I've been with them in Mexico, Arizona, because of the Trump wall.
Yes.
And just a bit about that, the Mennonites, because they're impartial, they're fair, but they hear everyone. We're able to work with Border Patrol, like literally work with Border Patrol in the American side, and work with the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico.
Amazing.
The cartel people explaining what they're doing, helping to get water, to save lives, to save kids, and they're very real. But the Mennonites are able, everyone trusts them, and we're able to carry messages back and forth between a young Border Patrol and a young cartel. And they both say, the most important job I'm doing is saving kids' lives out here. Right? And they can see each other reflected in the humanity rather than in the uniform. So
Very
it's
good.
very rewarding.
Very good. And you got to be careful.
You do have to be careful, because I just returned from Palestine, and we were taking children, kindergarten children and grade school kids through checkpoints, and there's a lot of them, and they're heavily armed. Without going into all the details, they hit us with sound bombs, they hit us with tear gas, they fired live ammunition over our head. These people had sights on their rifles, they knew what they were doing. and they ambushed us from the rooftops. So, again, this has been amazing. The ability to take us into these places, and the people trust them to protect them. And I found myself literally trapped between half a dozen soldiers rushing at me with machine guns and a group of Palestinian young men, and the only thing standing between me and them was the hat that said I was there with peace observers. And
Wow.
yeah, so.
Oh boy.
And I'm off to Colombia the end of this month. There's an election in Colombia on the 17th.
Oh,
The situation,
that's what's
yeah, because of the FARC agreements, there's been some difficulty implementing them. Some of the paramilitary from the right wing are still active, and there's discord. So we will be there.
Come on. Well, anything else you want to talk about? I mean, you've got a number of things here, but I know you work with the Salvation Army thing, and but it's all good stuff.
Do a little bit about the Restorative Justice Board that
Oh, that'd be
started.
good. That's one thing we have to do.
The Restorative Justice Board was, which is what many of these things flowed out of. Rather than an adversarial system of justice, a cooperative system of justice, restoring order. And again, in this community where judges met together, the judges, the police, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, all came together saying, how do we do this better? How do we do this together better? And those connections in the community, which you could make, and then we started the youth justice, I think, was the most successful that came out of that.
Okay.
So kids that do minor crime, break into your car, steal from Walmart,
Mm-hmm.
we were able to organize citizens that would be trained by the Attorney General, and we would sit with the kid and their parents. So lawyers were welcome to come, but not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about how did this happen? But more importantly, what do we do to make it right? And 98% of those kids never went to court. It was resolved. Over 2,000 kids in this community alone never went to court because we were able to deal with it as a community. The parents, we would say to the parents, quite frankly, you know this kid much better than I ever will.
Mm-hmm.
How can I help you as a parent? How can I reinforce for you what you, because we all want this kid to turn out well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to do that. Where you may shuffle your parents off because that's what you do when you're 16, have someone else with authority saying, no, you will do this, and if you don't, you will be back here answering to me. So, you can yell at your mom, but you aren't going to yell at me.
But the upshot of the circle was always that first the young person had to admit guilt. And
Okay.
so they were going to have to do something
Yes.
to give back to the community, right?
Yeah.
And they ended up doing some incredible volunteer work.
Again,
Great.
what we found, kids that are involved in hockey and hobbies and interests,
Yeah.
we generally didn't see them. They were busy.
Oh yeah. Right.
These kids, we would say to them, what is it you really enjoy doing? What do you want to do? And often, I'm a musician, or I'm an artist, or say, okay. Give us an idea of what, if you weren't here, what would you, if you could do that, what would you do? And they would say, because they have dreams, of course they have dreams, right?
Yes.
Say, okay, you have to do that. We will not accept any excuses. Too early, too late, don't have money. No. You must do that. That's what we're ordering you to do. They would come back. I had kids come back to me and say, I've completed everything you told me I had to do. And I'm sticking with it. And you won't believe the people I've met and the things I'm doing. Right? And they just,
Beautiful.
they're on. They're on with life.
Great.
Yeah. Really rewarding.
And that's an ongoing thing.
That's an ongoing thing. Yeah. And it freed up an entire court day. Now the courts are overloaded.
Yes.
One complete day of youth court disappeared off the docket per week.
Wow.
That's a huge savings.
That is. Great. Rick?
So what I want to do, thank you very much for the first half of this. It's absolutely fascinating. I want to talk to you about what motivates you. Generally when I do these interviews, I always ask people why it is that they have done what they have done. So I guess my first question would be, what can you think from your childhood? Were your parents particularly active in causes? Is that where you picked this up?
No, I think my dad was a chair of the parent association for the school once. My mother always said charity starts at home, and she kind of kept herself at home. I think it came to both of us, really. Philip's first degree is in political science and philosophy. He finished that. I was doing linguistics. And Philip went to China right after he graduated, right? He got a slow boat to China.
Oh, really?
He worked on it. And he came back.
Under Mao Zedong, that's how old I am.
Wow.
Oh.
So, and also Cuba 59 had happened. Of course it was 15 years old then. But Che Guevara and Castro had always been heroes of Philip. So he came back from China and said, I'm going to Cuba. You
We're
can come
working
if
the
you want.
revolution.
I'm going to go and help with the cane cutting.
Wow.
So we did that. We didn't help. They didn't want us.
But there is a great story of that. We were we're in a hotel, and there was French-speaking people, and Marilyn never let on that she spoke French as well as Spanish, so we would eavesdrop. It was the FLQ, and the FLQ mostly was saying, "Whose idea was it to come here? The food's terrible."
Yeah, because it was before tourism in Cuba, so there was only one hotel Canadians could stay at. Well, we ended up in Mexico after that. We hitchhiked to the coast from Mexico City, and it kind of whet our appetite. Philip came back, we came back from that back to school. I think then you did your master's, which was in Latin American military complex.
Oh.
So did we go before or after? It doesn't matter, but we ended up in South America for a year traveling. And I can still remember coming home from that. We saw a lot. A couple of things that really changed our lives. But when we got home, driving down the highway, going to register at York University, it came to us that we live so well here in this country because of the poverty in South America or in the third world. We take advantage of it. That moment, I think we both decided we had a lot of work to do in our lives. But also, when we were in Colombia at a bus station, I got talking to I was 22 years old, talking to a young woman who had a baby boy in her arms.
Yep.
And our bus came before hers. And she did this. She said, "Here, you take my baby. He'll be much better off with you than me."
Wow.
Wow.
And so I think we both feel, tell me if I'm wrong, that we have a job to do. We are privileged, and we will never take it for granted that we're privileged. So if something needs to be done, and especially if it's got a social justice cause attached to it, we're gonna be there doing it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, I'm an old white guy, right? I'm exactly what they call the old white guy.
Yeah.
I am the beneficiary of every injustice that has been done in my honor, and to a large extent can remain willingly ignorant if you wish, or you can acknowledge, yeah, you have, you know, as Barack Obama so aptly put it, he said, you know, you think you hit a home run, but you were born on third base.
Yeah. Good
Very
point.
true, very true.
Good point.
Well, there has to be also, too, a certain amount of adventure, shall we say, however you determine that. I'm thinking adventure in the sense that a lot of people know that there's something wrong, but a lot of people don't have that sense of adventure to go out there and make a difference. I come from the business world, and I would meet people who, you know, I would be at meetings and people would say to me, I know there's something wrong, but I just can't get myself motivated to go out and do something. So I think that is a large part of it. That's what intrigues me, is the fact that you had each other to support.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
if you had met, God forbid, you had met somebody different and decided to have a life partnership with somebody different, maybe it wouldn't have turned out like this. You just seem to both have, now you had similar experiences together, or you had experiences together, so that would make a difference too.
I think it's more than adventure, a sense of responsibility. There is a world out there. It probably isn't the way you imagine it, and I think those experiences of going and seeing it, often it clarifies very quickly confusing issues. And at the same time, lets you see there's a lot of other factors around this. So it's not the adventure so much as the curiosity is satisfied to go in and see it and go, oh wow, yeah, this, that, right? And that wants you to go into other issues and say, well, how do I understand this? Or this doesn't make sense to me. And yet, you know, when you know, so often, I'm sure you've had it, you meet people that you've heard things about, and if you have dinner with them, by the end of the dinner you go, wow, what a great person. I had no idea. Right? There's, yeah, they had these things about them, but there's so much more. So.
Well, you said curiosity, and I think that's a lot of it. We do a lot of research on various things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You've got to go up the stairs and it'll become self-evident.
Thanks.
to the right.
The other, perhaps I should have more appropriately said courage, as opposed to, because I think there's a lot of courage. I think a lot of people don't believe that they can make a difference, or they don't believe that, and I think that from the people that I've noticed, you know, certainly in my life, people who have made a difference, and the people who not only recognized the need, but had the courage to step forward outside of their comfort zone, outside of creature comforts, and make a difference. So that's basically what I probably should have said rather than adventure.
But though it's so rewarding to do small things, to be able to assist someone in something simple. We call it crack filling. Right? Often the smallest thing can change a person's life. I'll give you an example of literally a guy that got thrown out of the shelters. He was so bad, right? He was in a ditch when I pulled him out of the ditch. He now has his own apartment. He has been clean and sober for 5, almost 6 years.
Wow.
He phones me every Christmas, and I know he's been good because I also know that if he fell in the ditch again, he would phone me. All that took, well, it was a lot of work. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that had only known prison, had only known shelters. He's functioning independently. So that's not courage. The reward, you know, that call at Christmas, you go, wow, that was worth every minute.
When we got back from South America, we went, there was an election coming. I can't remember what level it was at, but and to help the party that we believed that we would vote for, and we realized then that really the most important job we could do was lick the envelopes for sending up the mailings. But it's the small jobs,
Yeah.
and there's lots of them, so it gets to be a lot of work. But those are the jobs that are important.
Well, one of the reasons why I do these tapings, people, you asked me, and I guess I didn't click on me, but what I've noticed is as we have played them back, we used to, at the library, we used to, twice a month, we used to show them. And what amazed me is through the interviews that we did with people, it got people motivated to do things themselves, which I think is really important. I remember, and you knew my Uncle George, I remember my Uncle George saying to me that once you are able to have people connect, that the power is just enormous. And so that's one of the reasons, and the fact that I was desperately worried that we would lose people's stories. You know, that made me very sad. I would also ask you too, because my grandmother, who, as you know, I probably told you, was a Quaker. Her family were Quaker. And so I'm wondering what part the Quaker faith had in your life.
A huge part, absolutely huge. But we didn't come to Quakers until the early '90s, and again, it was a lot of research, a lot of curiosity satisfying it. In terms of how does it motivate us, for me, life is a prayer. I don't need to go to church on Sunday and sit and pray, because I hope I'm asking the divine, however we want to call that, every moment, what's the path I should be on. So that, the Quaker idea that, the belief that there's that of God, the divine, in every living being. So you have to help. You can't accept inequalities and discrimination.
But it's so that idea that there is that of the divine in everyone. Believe me, I've known some characters you've had to dig for a long time in some real muck, right, to find it, right? And there are times when you question, is it really there? But ultimately, it is there. I think also knowing Quakers are not upfront people. In fact, you probably know more Quakers than you think you do. It's that quiet in the background. So for us, I always know when I am emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, the Quakers will be there for me to support me, to assist. Because I often get so angry with the Quakers. She's going, really? But
So it came, we came to Quakers through the Sharon Temple, actually. We went there when Kitch Hill found the documents in the park. We went there that weekend, and what was Don and Beth's last name?
Jones.
Don Jones. I had all the kids, and Philip was talking to Don Jones, having the tour of the temple. And I think you went the next day to Quaker meeting.
Well, because I remember saying, Don, he told me the wonderful story of the temple and the children of peace. I said, where are they now? He said, well, they're all gone. I said, people with these ideas can't be gone. Where are they? Well, he said, the closest you're going to come is Quakers in Newmarket. I said, I live in Newmarket. There aren't any Quakers. Yes, there is.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are.
And so we went filled with skepticism, who are these people? What are they all about? And in due course came to go, wow, this resonates with us.
Well, I remember just, my thing was that my grandmother had to babysit for me. My father was a sickly man, and my grandmother had to babysit, and so she took me to a quilting with her relatives. And I remember this gentleman grabbing me by the arm and saying, "What are you doing for anybody else?" And I said, like, "I'm 9." And he goes, "And you don't think you have a responsibility?" And my life changed at that moment. And I remember my Uncle George, who was my substitute father, I said to him, you know, "What is it these people want?" And he said, "What's more important is, what do you want? Do you have a meaning in life? Do you have anything that means anything to you?" So that's the reason why I ask, is that I always, and I've been interviewing people, I worked in the business world, and I always start my interviews with business people by saying, what motivates you? Why are you the person that you are? And it's absolutely amazing, because most people go through a whole line of things in their life, and they really don't know what it is that motivates them, except for, they all say, there is just this spirit that they have, that either was passed down to them, or that they discovered in a difficult time in their life.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Ted Rogers. I had a discussion with Ted Rogers. I had a contract with Rogers, and I remember having lunch with him. And he said, "Oh, you're from Newmarket." And I said, you know, he started telling me the story of Rogers from Newmarket. And I said to him, "Why do you think you've been successful?" And he just looked at me, and he spent an hour probably telling me about the wrongs that were done to his father. And he said to me afterwards, he said, "I'm going to be on CNN on Larry King, and I'll mention this." And so I tuned into Larry King, and he talked about the fact that the people in Newmarket didn't turn their back on his father. And he said the hardest thing for him was to realize who you could count on and who you couldn't. And he said the sad thing in life was that you probably, if there were 100 people in front of you, you probably couldn't count on 99 of them. He was a very bitter man.
I was going to say, that's a
Yeah.
bitter
Very
comment.
bitter man. But the reason why I found it intriguing is that he was motivated by negative reasons. And I was always amazed that anybody could find meaning in anger. So this is something. So that's what we were preparing to do this, I knew that Mr. West was going to talk to you about your accomplishments or your efforts on behalf of others. I was interested in what motivated you. Because that's the one thing that always motivates me. Everybody I've ever interviewed, I found some way to ask that question.
Yeah. But for me, the other thing is people. Totally a people person.
Exactly. And the fact that you speak another language. My wife speaks 6, and I found that she has a much richer life than I could even imagine, because she could talk to people in their own language. So I think that alone opens up huge chunks of the world that are forever closed to me.
And just to reflect back again, I think that one of the luckiest things that ever happened to us was coming to Newmarket, because this is a community of many like-minded people, and I'm sure, as you say, you've done 100 of these interviews, because there are at least 100 people here that you run into them doing this and that and the same thing and assisting. It's a very interesting community for helping each other, helping move issues forward. Great clear lines of communication with the authorities and the citizenry. It's a very special place.
You said earlier that when you meet people, you're amazed at how much they intrigue you. In doing these interviews, and you do the research beforehand, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I've known these people for 20 years, and I had no idea what an incredible person this person was. I often tell the story. One of the first interviews I did was a lady, she was 94. It was part of a program we did on genealogy. What we did was we got the grandparents and the grandchildren together. In this case, it was great-grandmother and grandchildren, and we prepare questions. And one of the questions that the little boy asked his great-grandmother was, "What was your first job?" And she worked in burlesque. Now, we usually had 4 or 5 going on at a time, but I pulled up a chair and sat and listened to this lady because she was absolutely fascinating. She met her husband because he sat in the front row. But what really amazed me is I'm really into jazz and to all these things, and she said to me, maybe you would like to see my album. And she gets out this album, and she's got signed pictures and letters from Jolson and from Bob Hope and from all these famous people. So what really amazed me was after it was over, her son came to pick up the children, and the children started telling him about Grandma. He said, he seemed quite upset. He said, all these years you didn't tell me any of this? And she looked at him, put her hand on his arm, and she said, dear, you never cared anything about, and you never talked to us. And had you talked to us, we would have told you. But neither your grandfather nor I are interested in burdening you with our past. But I was thinking, you don't know that she knew Al Jolson, that she, so this just absolutely amazing. But this is one of the first ones I did, and this is what made me understand that there was, I do this for selfish reason too, because I get to learn more about people that I grew up in this town with, people that I really have never done due their due credit.
And at this stage of life, I attend more funerals and weddings, and I hear eulogies, and a number of times I'll even go, I really missed out. I wish I had known them better. I wish I had taken the time. Because, those stories like that.
This is it. And nobody was doing these oral histories, and we got off to, as I said, to a bad start, but we've been able to repair it a little bit. The town's no longer involved, and but that was just because there's a legal issue. But we do this. Mr. West has been involved, and it's been probably the best thing I've ever done. I've met people who I always wondered about. You always wonder about people. You meet them on the street, or you meet them at functions. This is the thing. You meet them at functions, and they're always involved in everything. There are some people that are involved in everything, and you don't really put 2 and 2 together and realize that they must have an incredible life.
Yeah, it's not unusual for Marilyn to point out at an event. She said, "That's an interesting person. We need to know them."
That's a rich way of looking at it. If we all got to know each other better, probably we'd be a heck of a lot better off.
Yeah.
Because you can't turn your back on somebody you know.
No, precisely.
Anyway, I thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.
What we'll do is we will, I will put this on a DVD, drop it off. You can take a look at the raw material, see if there's anything in there that you'd like to change. Then the next step is that we will make it look beautiful with titles and maybe some music, who knows.
I don't know about you. I mean, I'm not ashamed of anything I ever say. Sometimes it's probably better not to see it.
Yeah, but I'm sure you'd like some input on.
Well, the thing too is sometimes it's necessary to, I know this may not sound too appealing to you, to record some additional material. If, for instance, there's something that you feel needs clarification, whatever. As I say, I've had some wild experiences. I had a lady where everything was going absolutely wonderfully. She had just got finished talking about her years as an elder in the church, and the simple question was, how well did you know your neighbors? And for 20 minutes she went on telling me what an SOB the guy, and she still hated him from 40 years. I said, you have been dwelling on this for 40 years? And she said, yes. And she said, every day, what keeps her going is every day she reads the paper hoping that he will be in the obituary. And I said, what part about church elders did you miss? What item there? So of course we took that out. But I let her go on because I was afraid that if I stopped her, that we wouldn't get back to what I really wanted to talk about. So I let her go on, but with the intention that we were going to get rid of it. Got it. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it for
Thank you.
Thank
hosting
you too.
us.
No, it's good to see you both.
Thank you. and we'll send you a copy. Even if you don't want to see it, we'll send you a copy. And then the finished
Hope
product,
we didn't wear you out.
we'll give you a copy of the finished product. You can share that with your friends. Where will it turn up? Library. We're going to have, you know, in the monitors that they have in the library, we're going to be putting these on a loop.
Oh.
We're going to give a full copy to the library for an audio archive. And hopefully I'll be able to go back in the fall and continue showing them at the library. Because we've got so many.
Yeah.
You know, and people have given me their home movies from Christmas parades back in the 50s and just all kinds of stuff. So I cleaned it up. I went back to school. This was the best part of it. I went back to school, learned how to work on videos. And but so we have all this stuff, and we have to be able to show it.
Well, just because Marilyn was just when I was in Palestine, Marilyn went to visit her relatives in Vancouver. And all of the cousins brought all of the old photos, and they put everything together. We got Ancestry.com, and they organized it.
Oh.
It also has Google face recognition. And 4 times,
It's on Google Photos now.
the little kid next door showed up as a family member.
Holy
So
yes.
we're thinking
So
DNA, I think we
100
better
years
go.
ago.
You better check. Yeah, you better check. Yeah. Anyway,
There's so many stories around the town too, as you are aware. Like there's one about a lady that, you know, next to the Tombstone place, Elizabeth
Yeah.
Ford, she used to live there, and Cecilia used to walk down the main street, but she always looked